Howdy you lot, how's it going? I hope you're brilliant, fine and dandy. Now you can see we got the FTX Carnage on the bench. Now the reason that's on the bench, that's become sort of the example car, hasn't it, for this beginner series, this beginner in Nitro RC series that I've been doing. So let's talk about Throttle, because it would appear that quite a lot of beginners have trouble with telling when the throttle is open or closed. So you look at this, you might think to yourself, yeah, you're right. How the hell do you tell if the throttle is open and closed? Because believe it or not, obviously when you're not touching your transmitter, that should be tick over. That should be nothing. The car should be just sitting there, provided the engine's running. It should be sitting there doing nothing, just ticking over. But sometimes that's not the case, and sometimes when you start up your engine, you know, you put it on the ground, you pull the pole start, it starts up and it wants to rev. The wheels, if you've got it off the ground, might be spinning really, really fast, or if you've got it on the ground, it might just want to go. It might want to go, and you're trying to hold it back. You're trying to hold it back because it's trying to rev, and you're panicking. You're thinking, what do I do? What do I do? And then you put your finger over the exhaust and it stops, and you think to yourself, oh, what bloody happened there? I didn't even touch it. It shouldn't have been going anywhere. Well, you might have several settings set wrong, but the way that, well, the thing that I want to tell you in this video is how do you know if that's going to happen or not? Because you can tell if that's going to happen. Believe it or not, you can tell. You can prevent that. Should we call it a runaway? We'll call it a runaway, but it's not really a runaway, but we'll call it a runaway for the sake of this video. Make it exciting, why not? You can prevent that from happening just by looking at one thing. So, as I said, just because you're not touching that doesn't mean that this is closed. Now, obviously, we've got the servo. This does the brakes, and it also does the throttle. Throttle is your accelerator. It's the thing on the carburetor, which, when it's open, it lets loads of air in, which in turn sucks with it loads and loads of nitro. Okay, it sucks it with it. The air cut, the engine is, the piston's going up and down, and it creates a vacuum within there. And also, don't forget, you have also got the pressure tube coming from your exhaust going into your tank, which is then pressurizing your fuel pipe, which is here, pushing the nitro in as well. But your engine is creating a vacuum, sucking air in, which is also with it sucking nitro in, and we'll have a look at how that works in a second. So when that's closed, there's only a small little gap, so there's just enough air going in where it can burn a bit of nitro in air and just tick over, just idle, if you're in a country that uses the word idle, just sitting there. When it's open, which is, that was already closed, my mistake, it was closed. That is open. I opened it up and forgot to close it. That's open. When it's open, it's loads of it. The maximum amount is going in, which means the maximum amount of nitro is going into the engine. Obviously governed by the needles, but we will not talk about that in this video. I've done separate videos on needles. So, one way that we can tell if the throttle is closed is just by looking at it. You can see there, that's all bunched up together. That boot there is all bunched up together. It's closed. And if you're not sure, you can just open it. That's open. Oh, yep, it's definitely closed. It won't go any further. Look, doesn't matter how hard I push, it won't go no further. It'll open, but it won't close anymore. That's fully closed. So when you start your engine now, there's absolutely no way at all that it will rev up. If it does rev up, you've got a serious problem. You've got an air leak somewhere on one of the seals, probably on the crankshaft, or maybe around the carburetor. For a beginner, we're not going to talk about that, because that's not really for beginners. That's probably a different topic in a different video. It won't rev up with the throttle closed, so you don't have to worry. I know some people, they're on edge every time they start it. Is it going to rev? Is it going to rev? I don't know. If that's closed, it's never going to rev up. Alright, it might rev a bit if your tick over screw is turned in a bit, or if the mixture's a little bit lean, it might rev up a bit. But it's never going to go flat out. There's no way it can rev flat out with that throttle closed. There's simply not enough air. So the other way, and the absolute sure way of doing it, take off your air filter so that you can see straight into that throat of the carburetor right there. You can see now, maybe I'll zoom in a bit to make it a bit better for you. You can see this is all bunched up. Yeah, this is all the way in, and that's all the way closed. There's only a small gap, so it's never going to rev. You don't have to panic, you don't have to worry. If we open it up, now you can see what it looks like. That, it's like a concertina. It's all billowed out, it's opened, and we can see the gap. It's gone. The throttle slider's disappeared, and that is a direct path into the crank, not the crankshaft, well, yeah, the crankshaft, but into the block. And we can see there the needle where the nitro shoots in and gets sucked down from that high-speed needle. So again, closed, it will not rev. You haven't got to panic, you haven't got to worry. Always have it like this when you're starting the engine. Open, full throttle, full revs. It'll be going like the clappers if you start it up like that. Whee! Don't panic. Finger over the air filter if you've got it off. Finger over the exhaust. Turn it off. Close the throttle. Start it up again. Happy days. Move on with your life. Now you might be thinking, well, I haven't got a throttle that looks like that. It doesn't slide in and out. I've got one that sort of rotates. It's exactly the same. Exactly the same. Here's one that rotates. It's called a rotary throttle. I don't know what you call it. That's what I call it. So it's not on the engine, obviously. So this is fully open. See, you can see straight through it. That's a direct path down into the block. Full throttle. Going like the clappers. Closed. You can see it's closed. You can't see down there anymore. You can see it's closed. So all you have to do is, these are a little bit more difficult to tell whether they're open or closed from looking that way. I mean, how would you know? You wouldn't really. You would know from experience, but as a beginner you wouldn't know. Unlike with this one, it's definite, 100%. If it's like that, it's open. If it's like that, it's definitely closed. You don't have to look down there. But with these, a little bit more difficult. So I'd recommend for you beginners, take off the air filter and look directly down. Open, closed, tick over, will not rev up, will not rev, will rev, going like the clappers. While we're on this topic, I want to touch on this thing. A lot of people got it into their heads because back when real actual cars had carburetors on, petrol engines had carburetors. You do get them now. I mean, I've got one with a carburetor on it. But most petrol engines now are fuel injected. But they had an acceleration pump, an accelerator pump on them. So when you pump the throttle or the accelerator, it pumps a shot of petrol into the carburetor, and you can flood your engine. If it's turned off completely, turned off, keys out the ignition, you push that throttle pedal, it will pump petrol still into it and flood the engine. People get that mixed up and assume that all carburetors are the same. No, it's just cars, real cars, and some motorbikes as well, probably some other things. But when it comes to petrol RC cars with a little two-stroke engine on, no petrol pump. You can pump that throttle as much as you want, no petrol is going to be going in. And when you come to nitro like this, there is no pump. All right, you can open and close that throttle as much as you want. All right, no nitro is going to be pumped in. So all of those who, a few comment on my videos actually, but there's a lot of people out there I know that under the impression that they mustn't touch the throttle, because if they touch the throttle, this isn't connected to that by the way, if they touch the throttle and keep doing that, they're going to flood their engine. Absolutely not true in the slightest when it comes to nitro carburetors. You can move that up and down, in and out, as much as you want, and nothing is going to happen while the engine is off. Another thing, if your engine won't start, you know that the throttle is closed like that. It's closed, okay? You're putting on the pull start, perhaps you've got a roto start, or the roto start, or maybe you've even got a starter box if you're one of those posh people. And it won't start, alright? What you can do, if you've got your transmitter turned off and there's no radio gear, or the radio gear is off, you can just open up your throttle using the servo like that, and that'll hold it ever so slightly open. That'll give it a little bit of an extra kick of air and nitro kicking into it to get it to start up. A lot of carbureted engines do like a little bit of throttle to start. Real full-sized cars with carburetors, strimmers, petrol RC cars with little two-stroke 26 or 30cc engines, whatever they may be, and also nitro. Because of the nature of a carburetor, sometimes if you open the throttle a little bit more air goes in, a little bit more nitro goes in, it's enough. It helps it start. It'll rev up, it'll go ring when you start it. You let go of the throttle immediately, it will go down to a nice tick over. Now, if you've obviously got your transmitter turned on and your radio gear is working, you can simply just do that and pull the pull start or do the roto start. Hold the throttle wide open like that. As soon as it starts, you let go. Some posh transmitters, you can set a high idle, as they call it, particularly for starting. You press a button and it automatically opens the throttle for you, so you haven't got to hold your transmitter. Once it's started, you press the button again, it brings it back to your tick over. Now, that's for posh, expensive transmitters. This one doesn't have that function, so I simply just hold the throttle wide open and pull on the pull start. Hopefully, I've managed to expel some myths, help some of you understand how throttle works, and it's very simple to tell whether it's closed or open. And don't panic if you're not sure. Just look. Don't think, oh, I don't know if it's going to rev. What do? I don't know. And then trying to start it, and you're thinking to yourself, is it going to take? Is it going to take off? Is it going to rev? It's very simple. Just stop. Take a bit of time. Take the air filter off. Have a look. If the throttle is closed, as we explained earlier on in the video, it will not rev, alright? It will not go flat out. It might rev a bit, but it ain't going to be flat out, so you don't need to worry. And as I said, and I'll touch on it again, if your mixture is slightly lean or really lean, it will rev up, alright? Even with the throttle closed, it will rev up, but it won't go flat out. But it will rev quite high, and it might be quite scary because it'll be quite loud and it'll be quite hectic because it's lean. You need to richen it up. Turn that high-speed needle. I'm not going to touch on needles too much in this video, but turn this needle out, yeah, anti-clockwise. One or half or one turn, whatever. Because when the throttle is closed like that, as long as that gap's not too big with a tick-over screw, it should not be revving up. Okay, unless you've got air leaks and things. But as I explained, air leaks and all that other kind of stuff are not really for beginners. You need to understand how the engine works before we can start discussing air leaks. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope that's helped some of you, and I hope that if you've got an issue like what I've explained, now you know how to solve it, and you're going to move on with life, and you'll start to understand more. And it's all about learning. Everybody starts somewhere. We'll add to our learning experience. If you're thinking about getting a nitro car and you're just gathering knowledge, happy days. Hopefully you'll pick all this up, and when you eventually get your car, you'll know exactly what to do, and you won't be stumbling around in the middle of a field somewhere thinking, what the hell do I do? Happy days. Treat people nicely. Treat people how you want to be treated, and we should have a nice happy life. I'll see you later on. All the best, you lot. Take care.